This video is going to introduce you to the rectangular coordinate system, which is sometimes also called the Cartesian coordinate system because the gentleman who developed this particular tool that we use in algebra was named Rene Descartes. He was a philosopher, a scientist, and also a mathematician that lived in France. In philosophy, he taught us, I think, therefore I am. In mathematics, he gave us the coordinate plane that we use for graphing in algebra. And the story behind the development of the coordinate system says that Descartes developed it while he was sick in the bed. According to the story, Descartes was staring at a fly crawling on the ceiling when he realized he could describe the fly's location in relationship to the perpendicular lines formed by the adjacent walls of the room. And so he took that idea and realized that he could locate any object in a two-dimensional plane using just two numbers. How far it was from the horizontal axis and how far it was from the vertical axis. And so he introduced us to what has become one of the foundations of algebra, and that is the rectangular coordinate system. The rectangular or the Cartesian coordinate system is a two-dimensional plane, so it's a flat surface with two number lines that are perpendicular to each other. We call the horizontal number line the x-axis. The vertical number line is called the y-axis, and the point of intersection of the two number lines is called the origin. When you draw those two number lines, I'm going to show it to you in just a minute, it divides the plane into four distinct regions, and we call those regions quadrants, and they are numbered counterclockwise beginning in the upper right corner. So let me try to sketch you one here so you can see what the coordinate plane looks like. So we would have a horizontal number line, and it's called the x-axis, or sometimes we just shorten it and we call it x. And you would have, number it off, you'd have kind of 0 in the middle. You would have positive numbers to the right, which is the traditional focus. And you would have negative numbers to the left because they're below 0. And then we have a second number line which runs vertically, and they intersect at 0. So I have the y-axis, which is a vertical number line, and again they intersect at 0. So again, 0's in the center for the vertical, and then positive numbers go up and negative numbers would go down. So you have the two number lines. The horizontal is called the x-axis and the vertical is called the y-axis. The point where the two number lines intersect, which I commented was 0, is called the origin. Okay, origin is kind of a fancy math word to mean the beginning. And so we normally start counting at 0. So hopefully it makes sense that the origin would be at 0 on both number lines. Again, what happens is it divides that flat surface into four regions. And we start in the upper right-hand corner, and we call them quadrants. And they're labeled using 1, 2, 3, 4. So in the upper right, you have quadrant 1. Working counterclockwise, you have quadrant 2. And lower left, you have quadrant 3. Sometimes they're numbered with Roman numerals, or you can use just good old everyday numbers. It's kind of up to you, okay, whether you want to use Roman numerals or regular numbers. And then the lower right is quadrant 4. And there's a pattern to the numbers that fall into each one of those quadrants, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Because there are two number lines, each point, when we want to describe its location, just like Descartes wanted to describe the location of the fly, we have to have two numbers. And so a point in the plane is defined as an ordered pair. An ordered pair is a pair or two numbers written in parentheses in which the order matters. And the order that it's written, we always state the X first and then the Y. So oftentimes we say it's alphabetical, X, comma, Y. And you have to be careful because that notation looks similar to the interval notation that we've talked about previously, but in the context, it is an ordered pair. So let's talk about those two numbers. The first number in the pair is sometimes called the X component or the X coordinate or the independent variable. And the X value tells us how many units to move on the X axis, which means it's going to tell us how many to move right or left. Now, hopefully common sense would tell you if it's positive, you're going to move to the right. That's the direction of the positive numbers. And negative, you would move to the left because that's the direction of the negative numbers. The second number in the ordered pair is called the Y component or the Y coordinate or the dependent variable. And it tells you how many units to move on the Y axis. And again, that is whether to go up or down. Again, hopefully common sense tells you positive numbers go up and negative numbers go down because that's how the number line is numbered. So if we go back to our picture of our coordinate plane for a second, one of the things we notice for the origin, the ordered pair that corresponds to the origin would be 0, 0, okay, because we didn't move any left or right, and we did not move any up or down. One of the things in quadrant 1 that it helps to notice is that in quadrant 1, you should always have a positive X and a positive Y, because in order to be in quadrant 1, you would have moved right and up. In quadrant 2, you would have a negative X and a positive Y because you move left and up. In quadrant 3, you would have a negative X and a negative Y because you moved left and down. And finally, in quadrant 4, you would have a positive X and a negative Y because you moved right and down. Now, you can also, sometimes we say we're on the axis. If you end up exactly on the number line, we say we're on the either x-axis or y-axis, depending upon the ordered pair. One of the most basic skills that you need to be familiar with in algebra is how to plot a point, because we plot points ultimately to create the picture of a graph, such as a line or a parabola or even a circle. So to plot a point on the coordinate plane, we always begin at the origin. That's our starting point. And then we move x units either right or left as indicated by the number. And then we move y units up or down. It's sort of like you're going to be making an L shape because you're going to move left or right, depending upon which direction you want to go. You're going to move right and up, or you could move left and up. You could move left and down, or you can move right and down. So it's sort of like making an L shape, if that helps you in terms of graphing the points. So let's look at an example of how to just do basic graphing of a point, and then later we'll come back and talk about how to put it together in an equation. So if I'm looking at these points here, point A is the point 3, 5. So I'm going to begin at the origin. 3 tells me to move 3 units to the right, 1, 2, 3, and then 5 tells me to go 5 up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here is point A, and notice it's positive, positive, and we are in quadrant 1. Point B is 0, 2. 0 indicates not to move any left or right, no units left or right, but then to move 2 units up. So that's point B. And point B is actually on the y-axis. Then we have point C, which is -4, +6. So again, starting at the origin, we're going to move 4 to the left because it's negative. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we want to go 6 up because it's positive. So 4, 6. This would be point C. Excuse me. And notice that's in quadrant 2 because it was negative, positive. Starting with point D, again, I'm back at the origin for my starting point location. It tells me to move 3 to the left, -3, 0. So 3 left, 1, 2, 3. And 0 indicates not to move any up or down. So here would be point D. And point D is on the x-axis. Point E, so again, I'm going to start at the origin. It's -2, -5. So the 2 tells me to move 2 units left, 1, 2, and then -5 is 5 units down. So there's E. And it is in quadrant 3 because I have negative, negative. Point F, again, beginning at the origin, it says 0, -4. So 0 indicates not to move any left or right, and then I'm going to go 4 units down. There's point F. And it is on the y-axis. All right, back to the origin. Point G is 1, -2. So that tells me to go 1 unit to the right because it's positive, and then 2 units down because the 2 is negative. So here would be point G. And point G is in quadrant 4. And finally, point H, the last one, I'm moving 6 units to the right, which is 6, 0. Tells me to move starting at the origin, move 6 to the right, and none up or down. And that would be point H. Point H is on the x-axis. Okay, guys, this is just the beginning of graphing in algebra, but you got to understand how to graph basic points in the rectangular coordinate system in order to proceed into graphing equations and functions.